Piper.
Good morning.
I'm gonna make my tea real quick.
Just letting you guys know we are live on YouTube, but not recording yet.
Oh, good reminder.
We allowed to talk about how much snow you guys got up at Alta? Is anyone up there?
I am up here, but I actually did not look at what they reported, but I bet the skiing is really good.
Yeah. Piper.
Good morning.
Make my tea real quick.
Just letting you guys know we are live on YouTube, but not recording yet.
Oh.
I think I got rid of that. Chris, and Elise, just letting you guys know, I see you have your audio off, but we're live on YouTube, but not broadcasting yet, or I mean, not recording yet. So
Thank you.
everyone's watching you eat your sandwich.
Noon is a long ways off if you wake up at 6, you know. Not that we're there, but-
Certainly is.
Yeah.
Work session, January 5th, 2021, 11 a.m.
Hello,
I am recording.
thanks for
I
letting
just
us know.
started as well, Piper.
Okay. How is everybody?
Hi, good.
Hey, Sheridan.
Hi there.
How you doing, Elise?
I'm good.
Good. Good. Haven't run into you in a while.
I know, like I was talking to Margaret earlier this morning, and I've been pretty busy at the ski area, so I'm kind of glad the holidays are over.
Busy at the refund desk.
Yes, you
Yeah.
are correct.
Yeah.
It's pretty much been my life for the last couple weeks.
Yeah, I bet. Thanks for the quick response, by the way, to Kate's
Yeah.
inquiry. Appreciate that. Well, it is 11 o'clock. So let's call this work session to order. I see Sheridan, Elise, Cliff, and me. I'm guessing that here comes Margaret. Okay, good. Hi, Margaret. She can't hear me yet. Now she can. How you doing, Margaret? Good morning. Okay, I'm going to call the work session to order of the work session of the Alta Town Council of Tuesday, January 5th, 2021. We are going to have this be an electronic meeting without an anchor location. And as part of that, I need to read a determination regarding conducting the Town of Alta public meetings without an anchor location. So the mayor of the Town of Alta, that's me, determines that conducting a meeting with an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location pursuant to Utah Code Section 52-4-2074 and Resolution 2020 R12. The facts upon which this determination is based include the percent and number of positive COVID-19 cases in Utah has been significantly higher than since May 27, 2020. The 7-day average for cases on December 30th is 2,288, with about half the state's cases in Salt Lake County. As of December 30th, 2020, there have been 1,269 deaths reported in Utah due to COVID-19. This meeting will not have a physical anchor location. All attendees will connect remotely. Attendees may join the webinar by registering for the meeting through the town website, which is the www.townofelta.com, or the meeting can be watched on YouTube, which we are now live on. Additionally, comments can be emailed to the town clerk at pleverd@townofelta.com. This determination will expire 30 days on January 29th, 2021 by me and attested by Piper. Will we have to read another one of these next week then, Polly, or are we good
Yeah.
for?
You always have to read it.
That's what I thought. Okay.
The letter lasts for 30 days, but you are required to read it before every meeting.
That was my recollection, but okay. So we've heard that before. I think we've been hearing that now. We've probably heard that, 15 times or something like that. So on our agenda today, we have one item, which is a discussion about the amendments to the town zoning ordinance. I know that Margaret has things she wants to say, and I know that Cliff has things to say from my conversations with both via email and, on the phone with them. John, do you want to make the first opening statement like we have been doing with this issue from the beginning?
Sure, thank you. And hi, everybody. I think everybody knows now I should have this memorized, 10(6)(a) 9G, paragraph 3. I mean, we could do all the other ordinances 10 times in the time that we are spending on how to actually address this perfectly or adequately. So we're not there yet because there's a lot of different things that keep popping up. What possible exemptions in the Upper Albion Basin Protection Overlay Zone can we address for commercial ski area and picnic area operations? So, and I've been talking to others as well. And even like a little while ago, I'm thinking it might be better, instead of talking about this paragraph 3 and how to fix it and fill in all the blanks so that we can move forward, to talk about all the other proposed amendments, set this aside for a while, and get everything else taken care of before we move on. Or you could choose to, we could easily spend the hour on paragraph 3 on the potential exemptions. And now after Harris, the mayor, talked about Margaret and Cliff's comments, maybe that's what we should do. Start with those comments. See how far along we can get on this paragraph 3. If we're still a little bit up in the air, maybe we could finish the other comments that we haven't yet addressed, because they're pretty straightforward and should be relatively uncontroversial, and go from there. So spend the time on paragraph 3, put that aside, look at everything else, or what's your pleasure? Not a very good lead in, but
Well, I think that the exemption issue is the one that has been attracting a lot of our attention. So why don't we talk about that for at least for a few minutes? As I understand it, the issue is we, on the one hand, don't want to divest ourselves of our zoning authority over private ground. On the other hand, we don't want to put undue burdens on whatever commercial ski areas might be operating in the town of Alta. And because they sometimes need to get things done without having to consult the town on issues that may be smaller than deserve a lot of attention. Is that a fair way of framing the discussion? Does that seem reasonable to you guys? Okay. All right. On the one extreme, we could say, although we have an issue with treating different property owners similarly, we could say that the commercial ski area on its private ground can do whatever it can do on the public ground that it occupies. And that's at least one of the extreme versions that I've heard. And on the other hand, we could say that whatever they do on private ground is subject to our full zoning approval process. I don't think anybody here is exactly saying that they want to be on either end of that entirely, although I may be wrong about that. Cliff, I know you've been working pretty hard to try to integrate these views. Would you like to talk about how you think we can do that?
Sure. I think the exemption for ski area operations on public lands that are subject to Forest Service regulation is one separate issue that can be dealt with separately. I think that we should also have consideration to ski area operations on private lands, and I still hope that there's a middle path. Probably not going to make anybody happy on any of the extremes, but I believe that there is a middle path, and it has nothing to do with special accommodation or favoritism toward a particular landowner like Alta Ski Area. It has everything to do with accommodating commercial ski area operations, which is the heart of our community. And it's not that far-fetched to imagine that the boundaries of the town of Alta could change, and that there actually could be more than one competing private commercial ski area operator. So the intent would be to accommodate commercial ski area operations. It has nothing to do with favoritism toward a particular landowner. And if we're able to find a middle way to accommodate commercial ski area operations on private lands, there is a clear distinction that needs to be drawn between minor structures, all of which have to be defined. I'm not going to use vague ideas of what's minor and major, but minor structures would be the ones that the ski area has been citing all along, such as signs, gates, fences, could be picnic tables and fire pits. And the major ones clearly are ski lifts, avalanche control devices, and snowmaking. The former, the minor ones, I believe it's appropriate to treat those differently and to allow an exemption to the extent that those comply with the most restrictive regulations on the adjacent public lands. On the other hand, the major ski area operations should be completely subject to the ordinances of the town of Alton, including the stream setbacks, with the provision, and this is where I'm out of my depth legally and really need some help from legal counsel, but an appropriate provision for variance or waiver, whatever the right legal doctrines are, under the right circumstances, with standards to be applied, with clear standards that can be compliance with, which can be verified.
Can I just jump in with one way to kind of frame this? So from a legal perspective, it gets difficult if who you're exempting is, if you're defining who the exemption is for, but it is possible, and I think this maybe is the middle ground that Council Member Curry is talking about, is if you don't have an issue with Alta ski lifts putting in signs, for example, then let's regulate that putting in signs is okay on private area within the zone. And so that means that all private people also can put in a sign. They're less likely to do that. So that's, I think, a better way to think about it is, are you okay with the land use? It shouldn't matter who is the one who wants to use the land use. It shouldn't matter whether it's Alta ski lifts or a resident. What matters is the actual use of the land.
And then if I can jump in too, we've shifted a little bit and maybe jumped over minor or more significant land uses that we're not, I don't think we've actually come to an agreement on what we should or shouldn't think about exempting. So we
I saw three topics in what Cliff said that I think need to be resolved, and Polly and John just pointed to two of them. One is how do we define, are we looking at uses? Are we looking at users? This difference between major and minor. And then if we were to say that you need to, well, this may be tied to users versus uses, but Cliff mentioned something about the most restrictive restrictive provisions on the adjacent public land. Not every private landowner will operate on public land, only off the top of my head, one does. And then adjacent would have to be defined, meaning what? Do you actually mean, right next door? Do you mean anywhere where they're operating within the town, say, on public ground?
Yeah, maybe adjacent is a red herring. We could potentially just refer to the most restrictive regulations covering public lands located within the town of Alton.
Yeah, and that could apply to everybody, right? If we figured out what uses as Polly was just suggesting, we thought were minor and were exemptable, maybe we have that provision for everybody. Margaret, I'm guessing you're interested in weighing in. Or is the time right for me to ask you what you're thinking?
Yeah, I suspect all of us want to weigh in on it, but I think that we've had one example where a private property owner up in the basin has put in stakes that are frankly a danger. And so if that property owner or any other were to say, well, I'm going to put up a sign, we may end up with a dangerous condition over which an exemption would give us no ability to control. So I think that when we establish any sort of exemption, we have to be really cautious about the precedent that we're establishing and impact on everybody with applicability. And a sign with maybe a 4x4 post that goes into the ground with minimal, my internet's unstable again, minimal consequence of both the construction impact as well as the maintenance impact thereafter. And so there is a difference in kind, I think, between a sign that would maybe be minor and a sign that would be major because of the considerations of the environment in which it's going and the effect on the rest of the community, as we talked about. So I have difficulty with the exemption in that area, particularly because it involves so many properties of so many different people and so many different uses. And I think that I'm kind of inclined to agree with John's, one of John's approaches was that we deal with everything else that we can. And because this one paragraph is so difficult for us, be able to address everything else and then come back on this paragraph alone at another time after we've had a chance to think about it and maybe get input from others about what the impact is. And it's not just the 5 or 7 of us dealing with this, but maybe get some help from others, because we seem to be either going around in circles or coming up with solutions, but then on further reflection don't seem to really be a viable solution. So as I say, I like the idea of adopting what we can potentially next week, leaving aside paragraph 3 of 10G, 10.6A G3 for another day, and reaching agreement on the rest, because I guess some of the things that both you and Cliff have said about, well, I think we all would agree, I'm not so sure. While I think that the ski operation is important to the town of Alta, I don't know about all this other impact of potentially a boundary change of the town, an additional ski area. And I'm not prepared today to talk about what I want to propose if somehow we annex Snowbird or we acquired Brighton or Solitude or whatever. That's way beyond my ability to analyze and decide about what the impact might be and how I want to address our language today to deal with that potential eventuality.
Which other people do you have in mind?
Well, I think that talking with people that have dealt with FCAUS and what its effect has been, both from the perspective of public utilities, but also Salt Lake City Water and their watershed. Mike Mon had suggested before that Snowbird had some interaction and involvement with FCAUS and had that I think it would be good for us to explore, to see about the kind of exceptions and waivers that FCAUS had brought up. I'd like to see what Park City or other mountain communities that have ski areas as part of their community, how they've dealt with it. I mean, we've got the Silver Lake area. I don't know how those things are impacted and how the zoning affects those areas. It may be that they don't apply at all and have no relevance to us, but perhaps they do have something. So I don't have a comprehensive list, and that's part of the reason why I would postpone it, is so I could come up with, or we come up with who it is that we feel should weigh in on this and help us deal with it.
Sheridan, Elise?
I think in the broadest strokes, I question if we frame this correctly. It seems to me that this is an issue of the town's land use authority and how we perceive concessionaires working with that, with our relationship with the Forest Service. It's really our Forest Service relationship that I'm looking at and scrutinizing. And I'm also considering that they simply just don't have enough people, bodies on the ground, to be witnessing everything that's happening until after the fact. So I think it's in our interest, and it's not an extreme position, to assert our land use authority and making sure that nothing happens within the boundaries of the town of Alta that we don't have clear oversight over. And I'm a little surprised that sometimes that seems as if it's posited as an extreme point of view. I actually think much of what's been suggested is much more middle ground, yet the boundaries about that argument have been pushed to the edges. So I'd like, in a broad stroke way, to suggest that this is really about our relationship with the Forest Service as a land use authority, as the town of Alta. And concessionaires, if they have issues with our decision-making around that, can take it up with the folks that they have the concession from, the Forest Service.
Okay, well, I don't know. It doesn't sound to me like we're going to come to a unanimity on this issue today.
I just, can I weigh in?
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, Lisa.
It's okay. So I actually really, I talked to Margaret about this earlier, but I like the direction that Margaret was going in her language with the, that the building permit required section, the FCAUS language. I thought that was just very simply, there's a whole sentence in there about state land or state and federal statute. And I think that kind of helps with what we're trying to look for in this. I also like that she had this proposal for possible waivers. And the reason I'm bringing some of this up is that first paragraph in the 10-1-7 building permit required section A, because we redefine structures, we keep talking about the ski areas, all these small structures for the ski area. But what we did when we redefined structures is any private landowner, like the Alta Lodge wants to put a picnic table out on their grassy area this summer, they're going to have to go through our building official. And I don't know if we have the staff or the energy to have all these private landowners wanting to do small little things like this too. And so I do like that Margaret has this waiver in here for that. But I think that's also going to be a lot of work. And so taking what Cliff said about possibly making some of these blanket exemptions for all of our private landowners might be beneficial to our town staff and what we have. I mean, the Peruvian wants to put a fire pit in their backyard or something. They're going to have to go through the building permit process, which seems very staff heavy and also a lot of work for our group. So that's my only comment, is because we redefine structure, I keep trying to read the whole document that we've done, and it seems like we've required quite a bit of work for some of our building official and our staff, as well as anybody that wants to put, let's say Margaret wants to put a slow sign at the bottom of her driveway for people that are driving by on the summer road. She's going to have to go through a permit process for that. And maybe that's okay. I just want to bring it up as long as we're aware that that's what we've stated is going to happen. I'm not against it. I just want to make it aware that that's what we're doing here for all of our private landowners, not just Albion Basin.
Well, and then I talked to, we didn't really radically redefine structure. And if I talked to Kurt about this, our building official, and he's very, very good at these things. And I mean, in the state mandated building code, a structure is basically anything which is constructed. So theoretically, since the beginning of time, everybody would have to get a building permit for any structure, even under the state mandated codes. I said, so Kurt, how do people deal with this? He goes, well, normally no municipality normally requires permits for such minor things like signs or picnic tables. But he says it's not really defined. So it would be good to define that, but we're not going to get any help from the state building code either, because a structure is a structure that's something that's built on the ground. And it's like, yikes. But you're right. We don't want to make anybody come to the town and get a building permit for a fire pit in their backyard, or I can think of, I don't want to say fence, because yeah, fences should get permits, and that'll be our next issue. But the structure issue, we need to define that a little better. And we do go a long way in defining that by saying, you know, every building is a structure, but not all structures are buildings. So we've narrowed it down in the proposed Upper Albion Basin Protection Overlay Zone structures. We're looking at possibly exempting structures which are not buildings. Now, if we want to, we can define structures a little better into major and minor, as Cliff said, with good definitions. That will help move us along a great deal, I think.
Well, okay, so we're halfway through this hour just about, and I don't feel like we've made a lot of progress this morning in that half an hour. We've expressed our concerns. So maybe we should shift to some of you know, it was I think on Thursday when Margaret sent me a document that she'd marked up, and I didn't really have much chance to look at it until this week. And I have some comments and questions about that. I mean, some of her ideas in there strike me as clearly advisable, like adding the word temporary in a few places where you did, Margaret. I had some clarifying questions, like, because there were some things that I thought I didn't understand, and there were some things that struck me as maybe we should go further, or anyway, I had some comments about that. I'm a little concerned about relying too heavily on FCAUS language. As I expressed in an email to Margaret, one of the reasons we rejected Catherine Cantor's suggestion of a year and a quarter ago of joining the Mountainous Planning District and was that we didn't want to give up our ability to write our own zoning. And I'm just a little concerned that if we start borrowing language from FCAUS, we make it really that much more attractive for the county to try to take over our zoning process. So I'm a little concerned about that, for one thing. Then I also don't know how successful it's been, and some of the language from FCAUS strikes me as being, I think it's the FCAUS language, but in any case, some of the language that is now been suggested strikes me as being pretty subjective and opening us up to objections. So those are my general thoughts about the rest of this document that I received. But I'm open to seeing how you all want to proceed. I think that you know, passing a zoning change without addressing the issue of ski area structures and what we think ought to be done about it strikes me as not getting the job done that we need to get done.
Yeah.
Well, I think since we're looking at a 55-page document, our job is more than just the ski area structures. And so being able to get the rest of it done seems to me to make sense. And then when we have time, we can get to the other part and maybe get to a point where the middle ground, the consensus, the idea of coming up with something that works, that addresses the concerns about the FCAUS language being too subjective, and so adopting that being a problem, of opening the door to the county saying, well, you've already done that, so you might as well just join us and give up your zoning, or concerns about private property and being able to limit the exemptions to what we intend it to be. It seems to me that really is a subject all of its own, and getting the Albion Basin Protection Overlay Zone in place, getting some of these other changes, amendments done, would get us partway to what we're intending to do. I mean, part of what we got from the Planning Commission was the protection overlay zone, but there was also other provisions. And so I don't consider it to be a failure to deal with what we can now. And then as we get to a point of resolution on the exemption or exceptions or waivers or however we're going to address it, time when we can.
So we do have, as a public body, we do have a decision-making procedure in place. Cliff, go ahead. Sorry, I just saw that you wanted to say something.
If I may be so impolite, let me point out that what we are engaged in here is politics. And the way that things actually get done is by trading off one interest against another interest. And so I don't really buy into the idea that we take each issue on its own. Rather, I think there has to be some give and take, and nobody's going to get everything exactly the way that they would prefer it to be. It's a matter of negotiation and trading off interests. It's not as though if you're buying a piece of property, you say, well, let's leave aside your closing conditions and inspection and your option and contingency, and let's just agree on the price, and then we can come back to those other issues. Doesn't work that way. If we're going to accomplish something, we're going to have to trade off interests against each other, and I don't think we're going to get anything done without reaching consensus on the ski area operation exemptions. And let me just come back to that point only very briefly to say the ski area operation exemptions are not a cute way of favoring one landowner. Far from it. The ski area operations has nothing to do with who that property owner is. It is at the very core of what makes our community run. So this is not a matter of making a special exemption for left-handed people with brown eyes who are over 6 feet tall. This is about the activity that's concerned.
As you were talking about the purchase price on a house and the other provisions, the classic example is, let's leave Jerusalem for later. And it didn't really work very well.
Let's
Uh,
leave.
We don't have 2,000 years.
Well, I mean, and I guess what Cliff just said kind of is a corollary to the point I was starting to make when I realized he wanted to say something, which is that eventually what we're going to end up with is a motion on the table, and we'll vote on potential amendments and eventually vote on the main motion. And that's the way that this body is empowered to make decisions. It makes it easier for us if we do the work up front in the work session, so to speak, and then get to the vote later after we know where we're going to go. But sometimes voting is the way that these decisions get made. Well, I'd like to ask Margaret for a couple of about some of the other aspects of what she proposed, if that would be amenable to everybody. Is that an okay way to spend the next few minutes?
And to help set that up, I sent, it's page by page in the ordinance in a different color, but there's a little memo of 1230, and there are 41 points that Margaret added to. And we've talked about this for a while. It's like, okay, once we get finished with whatever we're dealing with on the zoning ordinance, you can go back and address things that are maybe still up in the air. So these would qualify as that we've talked about. And now we've got them specifically listed and mentioned, and you can see them in the ordinance. And they're also listed in this 2.5-page memo. And there really isn't anything.
The 2.5-page memo is from you or from Margaret?
Me. I just took memo to the town council related to proposed zoning amendments of 12/30/20. And it just lists every one of the topics or every one of the subjects up to 41 in order by page.
Okay.
I just have a couple quick questions. Is there any precedent for counties taking over a community because of F-clause implementation that you're aware of, Mayor?
Well, they did that with, they made a deal with Brighton, basically. And they
The
tried
F-clause
to,
implementation incentivized that or paved the way for that, sir?
it was in place when they wanted to incorporate. And then they, as I remember the sequence, I don't know, was it about the same time as they started talking about incorporating?
It goes a
The
little bit,
Mountainous Planning District, anyway, it's a little different than FCOS, right?
and it's a little nefarious with the county, because when the county first started the Mountainous Planning District, they specifically put in there that, you know, everybody above a certain elevation in certain areas will be part of this Mountainous Planning District, subject to the county's, zoning, including existing municipalities. We had to bring that up and basically fight to get that removed. Had we missed that and not paid attention, we wouldn't be doing any of this right now.
Well, I mean, as an entity of the state doesn't see us as, in any sense, sovereign. They see us as an agency of the state. And so the state can remove, like they did, and give Salt Lake County authority over various aspects instead of the municipalities. So, or this municipality, I mean, they made some very specific provisions, like such and such can apply to municipalities that were incorporated after, what was the date, 2016 or something, Polly, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, they can get very
2018
specific.
even. Yeah.
John,
So-
I'm not finding that document. When did you send it, or can you share it?
December 30th,
Okay,
and it's in the, I don't know if I can share.
It's on the town's website as well, under materials.
You can share, John, your screen.
If I,
so which one is it? Oh, the zoning code additional comments? That's Margaret's, isn't it?
It's the one that John sent to us. I mean, it's listed with his name on it, I think, in the attachments.
The title is Final Zoning Issues, 12/30/20, memo
Yeah.
to the Alta Town Council.
I don't know. I'm not finding it for some
I
reason.
can share it. I'll send it to you.
Close.
And then if I may, respectfully to my fellow council member, Cliff, I don't agree with your
Oh, I
character
see it.
that it's
Sorry.
impossible to
Still trying to find.
make this all or nothing. I think that we could definitely come to agreement about many things and still have some things that we don't agree about that we can then solicit more experts to help us weigh in and make better decisions. So I'm just a little surprised that it does seem to so many people, or at least based on if my understanding of your views, that it has to be all or nothing, that we have to make some trade-offs to push this through in one fell swoop. That doesn't really add up to my conception of how we work together on this.
I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying I don't think it's in the interest of our community.
Okay, I'm going to share the document that John
I
sent.
disagree.
Okay, well,
Thank you.
right. Well, that's why we have, rules of order is to, when we disagree, to be able to make a decision nonetheless. Okay. So, yeah, okay. So John, thank you for this, because as I went through this document, I somehow overlooked this part of your email, but in any case, I think it got buried in a string of emails. But in any case, some of these are issues that I had in my mind too. So thanks. Adding a sentence recognizing the vital link between environmental and economic prosperity. I don't know what that link is. I mean, that seems like a statement that needs more specificity to me. I mean, I appreciate that these things can be related, but I don't know how they're related in the context that we're talking about. I wondered whether or not dark sky, we ought to say if it's adopted like John is suggesting here, but rather than just recommended, I wondered if we should require that. Otherwise,
Well, I talked about that a little bit with
Yeah.
Margaret, and it's like, if we put that in and just adopted it, essentially, we would be adopting the dark skies ordinance just by default. It's like a boxcar bill or something. So I think we have to be kind of careful of that. But in another respect, if we did that, then everybody would be required to do dark skies, even though we haven't followed through with all of the ordinance, the things required to adopt the dark skies ordinance.
right.
But so I think at this point, I mean, we're just trying to cajole everybody into being as dark sky compliant as possible before or if we get a dark
Right.
sky ordinance.
I guess my concern was why, if in a zoning document, why do we recommend something rather than say what we are expecting? I certainly agreed that servants was ill-advised. So thanks for pointing that out. There's some of these technical things like group dwellings with a comma, that made sense to me. I had some questions about the subjectivity of some of these changes. So I mean, we can actually look at these if you want, but I wasn't sure whether they needed to be revegetated as opposed to vegetated. I was a little confused about that one. Those were my main issues. But I'm happy to share my specific margin comments if that would be helpful.
And it would be helpful if at this work session, if there are some of these that don't need any discussion, if I can be given marching orders, I can make those amendments and prior to the next meeting so that we've incorporated those changes to the big code we've got.
And in the past, we have just gone one by one to check these things off. That's what we do with the planning commission and previous town council things, but we could do that, or, we've looked at some of these, and as the mayor said, if you've got some that you want to, just assume everything's checked off unless you have some that you want to discuss further. And of course, number 13 is all about 10(6A)(9)G, special regulations related to the exemption. So that ain't getting checked off today. Or if it does, I guess we're done. But if you just want to concentrate on the ones that you may have picked out and want to discuss further, and we could, or is that too, am I being too cavalier?
I was gonna say, I like the dark sky stuff. I don't have any problem with that. And then obviously any of these ones that are grammar or, like the servant one with employees, I think that one's makes a lot of sense. I don't have any of these that jump out. I actually liked number 1, the adding that sentence between recognizing that we need to find a link or a balance between, environmental protection and economic prosperity. I like that. I don't have any others that I'm against. Obviously, number 13 is our big topic one, but I think a lot of these other ones are just cleaning up language that needs to be fixed.
Number 9 relates to the discussion about exemption.
Yep, number 9 for sure is still a question.
Well, as about that vital link, I just don't know what we're talking about there. That was my problem with that. I don't know what that's referring to.
I think the only thing I was thinking about with that, Harris, was we have aspirational and kind of language in our code about what it is that we want or desire. And this was a way of, as I agree with you, that it's nothing specific, but it does set up what the parameters are that we're trying to balance between the importance that we feel of the environment in which we find ourselves and the environment of an economic interest.
I think we have decided that we want to protect the Upper Albion Basin because we have that as a value. I don't think we're doing that because we want to sell tickets or anything like that. We're doing it because that itself is the value.
But this
Whether there's an economic link or not, we think that's important. Watershed health, for example, is important even if it costs people something.
Well, then that means there is no exemption for the ski area in that area if we are talking about saying that the environment is our primary concern.
No, it's not our only concern. We can be concerned with more than one thing, but this is asserting that there's a link between those concerns that I don't know what that link is. Maybe it's just that we are concerned about both of them. And then we could say that we are concerned both for the economic, and I think that's true. We need to be concerned in our roles, both with the environmental, the preservation of the environmental integrity of our community, and with its economic vitality.
Yeah,
I thought this was, sorry.
Sorry, Cliff, I'm sorry.
It's a good point, Mayor. We are concerned with our economic sustainability we are concerned with ski area operations. We're concerned with environmental sustainability, but just to be brutally honest, environmental values do not necessarily promote economic values. In fact, there are trade-offs between those values and areas where they're frankly inconsistent, and we try to find the best balance.
Yeah, I think that there are ways in which they align and there are ways in which they conflict. And I think those are very complicated questions, you know? I mean, COVID has made it so people haven't been flying. That's been good for the environment. That has not been great for the tourism business. So just to take one example.
Isn't that sentence at the heart of why we have such different opinions about how we should proceed about the oversight of the ski lift company within our land use authority?
This is a very specific statement in a sense, right? The vital link. And I don't know what we're talking about. And I'd like to know what we're talking about.
I think leaving it that way allows for it to be interpreted how it needs to be interpreted according to a case-by-case basis. I mean, this has to do with the purpose of our zoning in total and not simply the purpose of the Albion Basin zone.
I would be fine if that sentence were to say that we are concerned with both the environment and economic prosperity, and that the purpose of zoning is to further both of those values to the extent that we can, with the best practical, bringing to bear the best practical wisdom that we can muster. Something like that makes sense to me. Here are two values. We hold both of them in our heart.
If we look at the entire paragraph of 10.1.2, it talks about the purpose, and this was an add-on to that. And in part, the language of a vital link was something that I picked up from language in FCAUS. And
But
so
that's what I expected, and that's part of. I mean, but just because it's. I mean, the thing is that the county, having been sitting on the CWC for, oh my God, I mean,
too long.
Talk about wheel spinning. You know, that language in the Mountain Accord and the language in FCAUS is negotiated with many, many more people than Alta has. And a compromised bit of language that makes people feel good and allows them to pass FCAUS may not be what we want to adopt. And that's part of why I want to be careful about what we take from FCAUS.
I think that, you know, when I read the whole paragraph that the sentence goes to, we talk a lot about the environment, protecting public health, the welfare of the town. We talk a lot about, you know, the geography, the preserving of the watershed. But what this sentence adds is that we are also interested in recognizing the economic prosperity of the town. So that's kind of how I read the sentence, is just adding that to that paragraph, because that is really important for our town. The sustainability economically is very important. So I think just adding that with that is kind of what needed, how I read it.
Oh, well, that's a good point.
I just like that part of it, because I think we as a town need to find that balance. We're this gateway community. We need to find a balance between protecting and promoting our environment, but also our economic prosperity as a town is very important.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. So maintain Alta as a vibrant, economically successful, et cetera. I mean, so it's easy to add economic prosperity into that list above. I'm just, I'm sorry. I mean, I can drop it. I just don't understand what the vital link means in this context.
I read it as they're both essentially connected to each other.
Yeah, how? How do we know that? I think it's a feel-good statement that I don't understand. I mean, like I said, we have ways of coming to a decision. And I'm happy to have there be an amendment to include that language, and I can vote against it. That's fine. Let me tell you the other thing about the subjectivity. I'm just looking for. Oh, how are we going to know on page 38? How are we going to, I don't know what point this is on John's. Let's see. 30,
33 or 4.
33, thanks. How do we know if something's not through the fault of the owner? How do you judge that?
Seems to me that it's something that the building.
Are we, Polly, are we opening ourselves up for,
We've had flood in the area.
oh, sorry, Margaret. I didn't realize you were still talking because you got cut out. So you say it's the building official who can do that?
We should
I
delegate.
believe
Oh. I was looking at the state code on this one because that also to see the state code doesn't define abandonment. They do refer to giving us authority to determine if you would allow someone to rebuild after abandonment. They have an exception under state code. We cannot prohibit somebody from rebuilding if there is a calamity, a fire, natural disaster. If they've been using, we can't say if it's been abandoned because of that, we have to give them a year to rebuild. Of course,
So calamity or act of God is what is meant by no fault of the owner.
Yeah, I think that's what, I don't
And
want
is
to
that-
put words in Margaret's mouth. But the state code was clear that those type of acts of God we do not have the ability to prevent people from rebuilding because of them.
Right.
I think we're leaning towards the other direction, right? Because of our environment in the town of Alta, things take longer than a year. So it seems like we're going the other way.
Okay, I was just asking specifically, is through no fault of the owner a clear statement?
Maybe we should just refer to an act of God, or let me just look at the state code again.
Another area where there's some specificity issue to me is, I don't see this one on John's list. Let me see. So on page 27, different kind or character. Who judges that? Prohibited all other uses different in kind or character are not permitted. I don't know. I mean, I think that part of what I'm focusing on is avoiding being litigated against.
Right. So just to jump in, the state code says, they say a municipality may not prohibit the reconstruction of a non-complying or non-conforming use of a structure that is involuntarily destroyed in whole or in part due to fire or other calamity unless the structure or use has been abandoned. And they don't define abandoned. So maybe our safest bet is to just parrot the state code. Councilmember Bork, do you have a thought on that since these are your suggestions?
One comment, Polly, we pronounce my last name Burke, not Bork.
Burke, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. I should know that by now.
Yeah, well, fortunately, we don't use our last name often in these communications, so it's not a big deal. I'm unfortunately looking, let me see if I can pull up the document itself, because looking at this list doesn't.
Well, and then if I butt in while you're looking, Margaret, Polly and everyone, I think we already have that in there. Parroting the state code, because we know about that and people in the basin ask about that often. But I think what Councilwoman Burke was trying to say is, what if I abandon my place and I don't use it for 2 years, and theoretically I could lose it, and then it gets destroyed by an avalanche? Do I then get to turn around and sell it and rebuild it?
Not under the state code, you wouldn't. So
Back to what you said, there's no definition of what's abandonment.
no.
All right, so it's now 12:01 and we scheduled this meeting until 12. So I think it's time for us to stop for now. I mean, I am happy to share my comments on that document now that I have them with the whole council, or with John and Polly, however, whatever your pleasure is. Would that be a useful next step? I'm not sure what we've accomplished.
Perhaps we can all share our comments with each other, or send it to John or Polly. And I also just want to take a second to commend my colleague in putting together such a comprehensive and thorough and well-drafted list of options.
If you all want to send your comments to me, I can get them all out to you, to all of you.
Is this topic gonna be in the next town council meeting? Because if it is, we're gonna need a new draft before then, and I think that's too short of a time.
Yeah, I can't save this document with my comments in it. Adobe is giving me a message that the number is out of range, and I don't know what that means. So I turned it into a Word document, but I don't know if that's going to be adequate. So I don't know. There's Margaret, I'm not sure how are you turning this into a PDF document, or are you working in the PDF document?
John sent the material to you, not me. So I don't know how, I think John maybe sent it to you as a PDF, but it sounds, I mean, to deal with Polly's question, orders for her to come up with a draft for our meeting next week. So it seems to me that we need to exchange with one another, as you suggested, Harris, receiving each other's comments and then see if we can work something out. And I can send you, as I say, John prepared that list of 40 plus. And so I can send you what he sent me, but I'm not sure that's helpful.
Yeah, I did the list, but I just forwarded on the document with Margaret's magenta comments in the margins and between lines.
Well, I mean, I think we need a different technology, because I don't have this kind of frustration at working with people around the world on other stuff. And so I'm sorry, I'm a little frustrated right now that I don't know how to get my comments to the other people in this call, but because I made them in the document that John sent around, or maybe it was from Margaret directly. I don't remember. The other thing that I find a little bit frustrating is to get something on, New Year's Eve or something like that, 4 days before we're having a meeting. It just isn't enough time for me, but all right. Well, we're not going to, There are a couple other issues that need to be discussed at a work session next week. The ski area, Mike Mon had asked me to put parking into a discussion in a work session. And we also need to distribute an amended budget and talk about that. So I think that's gonna. I mean,
And the ranked choice voting you wanted to discuss.
there was a third thing, that's right. And those are time sensitive. The ranked choice voting is in the budget. I don't know about the parking isn't all that time sensitive, I don't think, except that the ski area was interested in doing something this summer and they need approvals. So they were interested in getting that done.
And to answer the question, the land use amendments are on the agenda, the regular agenda, but it's only 10 or 15 minutes allotted to that. I
Sorry?
didn't hear that, Cliff.
He said that should be enough.
Oh, right.
All right, everybody. I'll see you on Wednesday.
Mayor or council, where are you saying leave that agenda then the way it is, or are we trying to change what we've already put in the agenda?
I would say, I don't know. I mean, we could have a land use section in the agenda, but it sounds like we're not really resolved on the big issues. And then also all these little things, if we're going to get comments to Polly and John, I don't know if they're going to have enough time to give us a whole 55-page redlined thing by the next town council meeting.
No,
Is what I was saying. So maybe we just take that off the agenda for now.
I agree, Elise, because particularly if we have comments and they're different, we don't yet have a consensus among the five of us. So Polly and John would not have the ability to know what direction it would take. So I'm kind of thinking that maybe that 10 or 15 minutes on the regular agenda be deleted and
Why don't
saved for undoubtedly.
I'm going to suggest we leave it on there for 10 or 15 minutes. And what we do is we ask Polly and John to review our comments back to them and to tell us where there was consensus, like on the word taking the word servant out. I suspect
like
there's
that.
going to be a number of I don't remember how many changes there are in that list, but if there's 50 of them, I'm willing to bet you that half of them are going to achieve consensus, and John and Polly can point out which ones those were.
good idea.
Is it helpful to you all if I resend you? I can resend you the clean version, and the last version I have is from August 20th. It looks like what Councilmember Burke was using was from the 6th. But I can send you that in Word if it makes it any easier for you to make comments, at least to those areas.
I would appreciate that.
Okay,
Yes, please.
okay, I'll send that out.
And
All right.
include me with that, please. I'll put it on the public record.
Okay.
All right, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
All righty. Bye.
Thank you.